joined by Brigadier General Yosef Cooper-Wasser, the former Director General of the Israel Ministry of Strategic Affairs and the former Head of Research in the IDF Military Intelligence. Thank you for being with us on Middle East Now. Now, today, just to set the context, we had yet another warning. The IAEA says there is literally no more surveillance of Iran's nuclear activities after they refused to let the UN renew the cameras. In your view, just how urgent is the situation right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And secondly, I think that the situation is quite dire. Yes, it is. Because the Iranians keep making progress towards becoming a threshold country, which means that they are getting closer to having the capability within a very short period of time of acquiring enough fissile material for a first atomic device, nuclear device. And this is something that Israel has repeatedly said it's not going to accept, because this means that Iran will have the capability to produce nuclear weapons. And at the same time, it's dire because the alternative is coming back to the JCPOA, to the Iran nuclear deal, which paves the road for the Iranians to have a big arsenal of nuclear weapons within less than 10 years, without any obstacles and without having to cross any threshold on the way. So both options are very problematic. And anyhow, it's going to pose a real challenge for Israel, and that's why Israel is getting ready and preparing itself to be up to the challenge.
So do you think the $1.5 billion that the government set aside today is appropriate? And does this mean Israel is serious about striking targets inside Iran, or is this more about ramping up the pressure to try and bring them back to negotiations?
Well, you can't ramp up the pressure if you don't do real things. Things that are can really change your capability to achieve your targets. And I think in this respect, we have to remember this is not started with the $1.5 billion that are the issue today. Israel has spent a lot of money, both fleet of F-35s and so on and so forth, just in order to be able to deal with this matter. And the reason is that Israel cannot count anymore, and hasn't counted on the United States for doing this job for the last 15 years. So that's why we have spent so much money and efforts in building the capability to be able to do what we need to do if we need to do it. And once you do that, it's also sending some messages to the Iranians and to the rest of the world about how serious we are in this issue.
Is the current policy of Bennett's government to allow some kind of negotiation with Iran to go ahead preferable to that of the previous government, which said you can't deal with this regime?
Well, I don't think that Israel has the power to tell the world whether they can or they cannot deal with this regime. We would like them very much to deal with this regime in a way that would lead to a much better deal. Israel is not against a deal. Israel is in favor of a good deal. What we have today is the choice between two bad situations, a terrible deal or an Iranian progress towards having the capability to produce one bomb. That's the situation we have today, and I think Israel is not against negotiations if they are about a longer, broader, stronger deal that would really prevent Iran from having the capability to produce nuclear weapons. That was also the policy of the Netanyahu government. There's no change on that.
And just very briefly, I mean, the Iranian economy is under severe strain. The country is not in a good place. Do you think it really wants to risk a conflict with Israel?
No, I think what they would like to do is to force the United States to re-enter the JCPOA under the Iranian terms, which means that they will take all the sanctions and do it before the Iranians do anything on their side. This is what they want to do, and the plan B they have is that if this is not going to work, they will keep moving towards having the capability to produce nuclear weapons, but be very cautious not to cross a certain line that would trigger an Israeli attack.
General Cooper-Wasser,